Dr. Allen didn't gasp. He didn't slam his fist or call for a nurse. He just froze, staring at the paper in his hand, like the words might change if he looked hard enough. Then, he slowly lifted his eyes to me. Earl Roger, a 60-something grandfather with a bad knee, and his 7-year-old granddaughter sleeping heavy against my chest. The silence stretched. 4 full seconds. Those 4 seconds felt like an eternity. Your granddaughter's head is heavy on your shoulder in a sterile pediatric clinic off Poplar Avenue in East Memphis, with fluorescent lights buzzing overhead and the sharp smell of antiseptic in the air, and time just stops. Ruby had just turned 7 the Friday before. She wasn't napping. This was the kind of deep, unnatural sleep that makes your stomach drop. Not the peaceful kind you see after a long day at the park. This was heavy and limp, the kind that doesn't belong at 4 o'clock on a random Tuesday afternoon. "Sir," Dr. Allen finally said, his voice low and careful, the way people talk when they're bracing for a bad reaction. "How long has she been drinking this juice?" I looked down at Ruby's small face, her cheek pressed against my shirt, then back at him. "I don't know," I answered, trying to keep my voice steady. "That's why we're here. Welcome to Dad's Raw Revenge. Get comfortable. The folks in these stories always had every chance to do the right thing. They just picked wrong every single time. Drop a comment if you've ever had that sick feeling in your gut with family. Hit like if you're already locked in. And subscribe, trust me, this one only gets darker." Let me take you back a couple hours to that same Tuesday. Ruby's birthday had been the previous Friday, October 11th. She turned 7, and I missed it. Not because I didn't care, and not because I forgot. I'd been laid up all week, with that same knee that's been killing me since 2019, the one that swells up and makes every step feel like walking on broken glass. By the time I could move without wincing, the party was over, the cake was gone, and my granddaughter had blown out her candles without me there. That hurt worse than the knee ever did. I kept picturing her at the table, candles flickering, eyes searching the door for Grandpa. So around 2:15 that Tuesday afternoon, I pulled myself together. I put on a clean shirt, grabbed the big purple gift bag I'd wrapped the night before, and drove from my place off Exeter Road in Germantown out to Collierville. The plan was simple. Drop off her gift, take her for ice cream, and let her tell me every single detail about the party I missed. Every kid who came, every present she got, every game they played. 3 days late, but I was going to make it right. Funny how the simplest plans can blow up in your face. I rang the bell. Vanessa answered with her phone glued to her ear, barely looking up. "Hey Vanessa, brought something for the birthday girl. I know I'm a few days late." She muttered that Ruby was upstairs and stepped aside, already turning back to her call. I stood in the entryway for a second, holding that purple bag, feeling exactly like what I was, a grandfather who'd missed his granddaughter's birthday and was trying to fix it with a stuffed animal. "Real smooth, Earl." I headed upstairs. Ruby's room was the second door on the left, the pink sign she painted herself still hanging crooked. "Ruby's room. Knock, please." I knocked softly. "Ruby Bug, it's Grandpa." Silence, then shuffling. The door cracked open. The second I saw her, something cold moved through my chest. She didn't look sick in the normal way. No fever, no runny nose. She just looked wrong. Heavy-lidded eyes, movements slow and sluggish, like she was seeing me through water. "Grandpa," she said, the smile coming a beat too late, delayed like a bad text message. I crouched down to her level, keeping my voice easy. "Hey, birthday girl. Sorry I missed your party, Bug. You still celebrating?" She leaned against the doorframe. "I'm just sleepy." It was 2 in the afternoon. She gave that classic 7-year-old shrug that says adults ask too many stupid questions. I stepped inside, sat on the edge of her bed, and handed her the bag. She opened it painfully slow, fingers fumbling more than any excited kid should. When she pulled out the stuffed elephant, her face finally lit up wide, warm, pure ruby. "I'm going to name her Grace," she said. "That's a perfect name, baby." She held Grace up, studying her the way kids do when they've already decided something belongs to them forever. Then she placed the elephant gently on her pillow, right in the middle, like she'd been saving that exact spot, and went quiet. That particular quiet kids get when they're working up the courage to say something important. I waited. She looked up at me with those big eyes, the way she only does when she needs to make sure no one else can hear. Both her small hands rested on my knee. My heart already knew something was deeply wrong. My brain was still catching up. "Grandpa," she whispered, her voice so soft it barely carried. "Can you ask Mommy to stop putting things in my juice? It makes me feel sleepy, and I don't like it." The room didn't spin. My heart didn't explode. I didn't grab her shoulders and demand she say it again. I just nodded once, slow and calm, like she'd asked for another cookie. "Okay, baby." I stood up and offered my hand. "Let's go for a little ride." I'm not a dramatic man, never have been, but I know when something's wrong the same way I know when an engine's got a bad bearing. You don't always hear the knock right away. Sometimes it's just a faint vibration in the wheel, a pull you feel in your gut before your head catches up. I walked downstairs with Ruby's hand in mine. Vanessa was still pacing the kitchen, phone to her ear, laughing at something. Laughing. "I'm taking Ruby for a little birthday treat," I said evenly. "Ice cream, just us." She waved me off without turning around. "Sure, fine, yeah." Not even a glance. I buckled Ruby into the booster seat in my old dark blue 2009 Ford F-150, the one she always said made her feel like a princess sitting up high. I started the engine and headed toward Memphis proper, driving exactly the speed limit the whole way. I didn't call Daniel yet. I didn't call anyone. First, I needed cold, clear facts. The pediatric urgent care on Poplar Avenue was the one I trusted. Dr. Allen had treated Ruby for ear infections before, and always gave it to me straight. I told the front desk it was urgent. Once we were in the exam room, I repeated exactly what Ruby had whispered. The sleepy eyes, the slow movements, the way she leaned on the doorframe like it was holding her up. Dr. Allen didn't brush me off or give me the overprotective grandpa look. He listened, glanced at Ruby sitting on the table eating crackers like it was any normal Tuesday, and ordered a full urine panel and tox screen. "We'll have results in about 40 minutes, he said. We waited. Around the 30-minute mark, Ruby climbed off the table, curled up against my arm in the chair, and just switched off. 1 second awake, the next gone. I sat frozen, staring at the plain beige wall, replaying her standing in that doorway, eyes heavy, body sagging. What if I had waited until the weekend? What if I hadn't come today? The door opened. Dr. Allen walked back in holding the results sheet. He looked at it, then at me, and stopped cold. 4 seconds again I counted them. "Sir," he said carefully, "how long has she been drinking this juice?" "What's in it?" I asked, my mouth dry. He sat down and turned the paper so I could see. Diphenhydramine. You probably know it better as Benadryl children's allergy medicine. Safe enough in the right dose, for the right reason. But the levels here? His exact words hit like a wrench to the chest, consistent with repeated intentional administration over an extended period. Not an accident, not once. Repeated, intentional, extended. I read that line 3 times, then folded my hands tight on my knee and forced a slow breath in through my nose, out through my mouth. The fluorescent light suddenly felt too bright, the antiseptic smell too sharp. "Is her mother home right now?" "Doctor," Allen asked quietly. "Yes." He reminded me he was legally required to report. I met his eyes. "Give me 24 hours, please." He studied me for a long moment. Whatever he saw, maybe the mechanic's calm, the guy who'd rebuilt too many broken engines to go off half-cocked, made him nod. "Tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. If I haven't heard from you by then, I make the call myself." We shook hands. I carried Ruby out to the truck, Grace, the elephant, tucked under her arm, and drove the 19 minutes back to Germantown, counting every single one. She slept the whole way, mouth slightly open, one small hand still gripping that stuffed toy like it was her anchor. I didn't call anyone. I drove the speed limit and let the silence do its job. It sorted the chaos in my head. I'd spent 3 days feeling guilty about missing a birthday party, while something far worse had been happening right under my nose in that house. 33 years, rebuilding broken engines taught me one thing. When the damage runs deep, you don't fix it with noise and drama. You fix it with precision. And I was just getting started. The worst part of betrayal isn't the first wave of anger. It's the inventory that comes after the quiet catalog of every red flag you ignored, every excuse you made, every instinct you talked yourself out of because you trusted the wrong person. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was falling apart. Earl Roger doesn't fall apart. I sat in my living room under the low glow of a single lamp, coffee going cold on the side table, and thought methodically, the way I used to diagnose a rebuild. What do I know for sure? What do I still need to prove? And what's the exact order to move without making things worse? What I knew, my granddaughter had been drugged, repeatedly, in her own home, by the one person who was supposed to protect her. What I didn't know yet was how long, how deep, and most of all why. That why kept me up until the sky started to lighten. If you've been around here for a bit, do me a solid and subscribe. It costs nothing and means everything. Like the video if this already has you leaning in, and tell me in the comments, what would you have done in that exam room? The words, "the best one yet," hung in the cab of that old F-150 as we pulled away from the Collierville house. The afternoon sun slanted through the windshield, catching faint dust motes in the air. Ruby's small fingers traced patterns on Grace, the elephant's trunk, while the booster seat creaked softly beneath her. My grip tightened on the steering wheel, knuckles whitening against the worn vinyl. Inside, my mind raced through a dozen what-ifs. What if that whisper had come a week later? What if the doctor hadn't believed me? What if the levels had been even higher? A cold knot settled low in my gut, the kind that doesn't loosen easy. I kept my face neutral, humming an old tune under my breath so she wouldn't sense the storm. She chattered happily about ice cream flavors, her voice already lighter, and I nodded along, anchoring myself to the familiar rumble of the engine and the faint smell of motor oil on the floor mats. Back at my place in Germantown, the house felt steadier with her there. The living room lamp cast a warm pool of light across the hardwood floors, mixing with the faint scent of fresh coffee I'd brewed earlier. I watched her settle in with grace, her eyelids finally fluttering shut in real, peaceful sleep instead of that drugged slump. My chest ached with a mix of relief and rage I couldn't voice yet. Earl Roger doesn't fall apart, but damn if that night didn't test me. I sat at the kitchen table under the low hum of the fridge, notebook open, pen scratching dates and details like I was logging a full-engine teardown. Every line felt heavier than the last. The next morning brought Ray Dobbins into the picture. We met at the Perkins on Summer Avenue. The diner smelled of bacon grease and cheap coffee. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as he slid the manila folder across the Formica table. My fingers brushed the edge, cool and crisp. I opened it slowly. The photos stared back Vanessa, with a sharp-dressed man I'd never seen. Hotel receipts time-stamped against nights Daniel had been traveling. My jaw clenched so tight I tasted metal. 8 months. The math hit like a socket wrench to the ribs. Ruby had just turned 7. Ray wrapped both hands around his coffee mug, eyes steady but quiet. The kind of guy who disappears in a crowd on purpose. Based on what I can confirm, at least 8 months. He paused, choosing his words carefully. The timeline of the drugging lined up with when the relationship became more frequent. Ruby was always there, so she put her to sleep. Convenience, not cartoon cruelty. Somehow that made my stomach turn even worse. I sat there, the folder heavy in my lap, letting the diner noise fade into the background, while the weight of it all pressed down. I asked about the guy Brandon Cole, 38, sales consultant, with that effortless confidence that comes from never having to scrape for much. Ray confirmed he knew about Ruby. He'd been told she was a difficult kid. Never asked a single follow-up question. Coward. 2 grown adults, one by marriage, one by choice, and neither one looked a 7-year-old girl in the eye and asked a real question. Daniel, my son, was out there grinding at work, trusting everything while it all fell apart behind his back. The audacity still makes me shake my head. I paid for the coffee, stood up, and tucked the folder under my arm, like evidence in a case I was building brick by brick. Ray, I need everything documented, dates, times, locations, airtight. He nodded. Already working on it. Good man. Driving home with the windows down, the October air in Memphis carried that sharp mix of cut grass and coming cold, the last warm breath before winter. Ruby was safe in the guest room when I got back, breathing steady and natural, Grace tucked beside her on the pillow. I stood in the doorway a long minute, the faint nightlight painting soft shadows across her face, then went to the kitchen table again. Notebook out, every piece logged in my own handwriting, doctor's words, investigators' findings, the timeline locking into place. I left a message for James Whitfield. "We're ready to move." Then I picked up the phone and called Daniel. Not the full story, not yet, just enough to bring him home. "Daniel, I need you to come over." He showed up Friday evening around 6:30. Silver Audi pulling into the driveway, jacket slung over one arm like he thought it was just dinner and catching up. He had no clue. I'd made sure Ruby was already asleep in the back bedroom, door cracked just enough to hear if she stirred. What was coming at that kitchen table wasn't for 7-year-old ears. The house smelled like pot roast and cornbread, the same meal I'd cooked for him every time life hit him hard. Junior year exams, that first business flop at 29. He didn't know it was my quiet ritual, but I did it anyway. Some anchors you don't explain. He walked in, hugged me quick, sniffed the air. "Something smells good. Where's Ruby?" "Asleep already. She's been doing better. Color coming back." He smiled, easy. "Good. She needed this." We sat. I let him eat the full plate, the second helping of cornbread, the sweet tea. One last comfortable moment before the ground shifted under him. Then I stood, went to the counter, and laid it all out. The medical report, the pharmacy trails James had traced. Ray's folder with the photos on top. I sat back down without a word. Let the papers speak first. Daniel picked up the medical report slowly, like it might burn him. His face didn't explode or crumple. It just went still, pond surface calm, right before the rock drops. He read it through, set it aside, moved to the pharmacy records, then opened the folder. The photos hit first. He closed it after 2. The kitchen went dead quiet except for the fridge humming. He stood up, controlled, and muttered, "Excuse me for a minute." He walked down the hall to the bathroom and shut the door. I sat there, refilled my tea, and watched the clock tick through 7 long minutes. When he came back, his eyes were red, but his voice was steady. He sat down and asked the question that mattered most. "Does Ruby know what was in the juice?" "No. She just knows it made her sleepy, and she didn't like it." He nodded once. "Good." His jaw tightened. "She doesn't need more than that yet." Right then I saw my son clearly, not the blindfolded husband who'd accepted the growth spurt excuse, but the real father underneath, the one who'd been there all along once the blindfold came off. He asked how long I'd known. "Since Tuesday." He let out a short, humorless breath, almost a laugh. "You rebuilt the whole engine before you showed me the damage." "Force of habit," I said. He pushed the folder aside and pulled out his phone. "I need James Whitfield's number. That's my son." He didn't rush the confrontation. He spent the weekend at my place, sleeping in his old room, sharing breakfast with Ruby, watching her carry Grace around the kitchen while he sipped coffee. Just observing, storing up the good moments. Sunday, he drove back to Collierville alone. He'd already moved money to a separate account, photographed documents in the home office, and spoken to James twice. Methodical, careful. He learned that somewhere. Monday morning, October 20th, he waited until Ruby was safely at school. I'd driven her myself and signed her in. Then he walked into that Collierville kitchen, the same one Vanessa loved photographing for Instagram, with perfect Sunday morning light and those carefully arranged coffee mugs. She was sitting at the table on her laptop. When he stepped in, she looked up and smiled like it was any other normal day. He didn't smile back. He just slid the medical report across the table toward her.